Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews coming at you guys with Salvation Season 1 Episode 3 review. Alright, so let's get right into it. So this series, it's a pretty cool series actually. I'm going to be doing this one and Zoo as well. So it's going to be sort of both are CBS shows and both sort of follow the same format. So I thought I'd jump on this one as well. I watched the first two episodes back to back. I love them, both really got me into this series. And then episode 3 came out, and it just, it blew me away. Probably the best one, I'd say, out of the 3 so far. Although episode 1 was very good in introducing characters and all that. But yeah, so both shows are kind of the same sort of thing, about a life-ending, crisis or whatever, right? And if you don't watch one of them, if you don't watch this one or you don't watch Zoo, I suggest you do, because they're both great shows. Now the quality of them not always up to par with some of the other big shows, like Walking Dead, stuff like that, Game of Thrones, but still very good TV shows, and very interesting scenes in them, some good action stuff in both. So yeah, anyways, though, let's get into this episode. So like I said, I liked this one. It was pretty good. So we start off with Harris and Grace waking up together, and that was coming from where episode 2 ended, where we saw Grace slip back into bed after trying to find her earring in his briefcase, and then she closed her eyes, but then we see his open. So we know that Harris, basically her boss, the Pentagon guy, he opens his eyes, and so we see that he knows that she's up to something, but obviously he doesn't know the full extent of it. He doesn't know about the uranium or anything like that, but he knows something's up. So anyways, so we know that Grace's daughter has gone camping with her dad, and she got poison ivy or something like that. So it was kind of a cool detail there. So that's how the show opens. And then, that is not how it opens. But that's sort of after the intro there. That's how that opens. But I will touch on that storyline with the boy at the beginning. I will touch on that just a little bit later. So then we get Liam and Professor Croft work on finding the frequency. So I think they said they had about 300,000, but at the time that we saw, they had 236,000 or something like that, that they had to check. And of course, that's going to take forever, and they only had 6 days to do it. So obviously, we know that that's going to be a struggle. I thought it was a little unrealistic, though, that they are trying to build this EM drive that no one's ever built before, and it defies, a scientific theory or whatever, right? And they just have to find one little working frequency, and then it just works. I find that kind of unrealistic, but I mean, it's TV, so not everything's going to be perfect. But maybe what we didn't see is them working towards getting to a point where they just needed the frequency to make it work. That could be it too, and I could just be wrong. Just did seem a little unrealistic. Just wanted to touch on that, but still a great concept, so we know what they're working towards and what the goals are of what that is. So then we see the task force meeting with Harris. Grace is there as well, because now she has the clearance. So the government plan of hitting the asteroid with that probe that's going around Jupiter right now, and that asteroid is coming, and so they basically say, are saying that they have 2 windows. So they have the 7 days and 63 days, and the asteroid's coming, I think it said, in about 130? I think it was 130 days. No, I don't think it was that. I think it was like 160 days or something like that until the asteroid hits. So they have 2 windows then, and they're going to try to hit the asteroid and have smaller meteors come to Earth. And they have learned that all the meteors that will come down will miss the whole Western Hemisphere. But it'll still kill 1 billion people in Russia and Europe and or sorry, Russia is prettier, but like Europe, Asia, and Africa, and all those continents there. So pretty interesting. So they're obviously willing to risk, the others' lives there, in exchange for theirs. So pretty pretty big deal there. But yeah, so then we meet a little bit before that meeting. Actually, we see Claire, and she's the woman who comes, and she's basically the second or the right hand woman, I guess, to the president, or the president's assistant, something like that. I didn't quite catch her role, but she's a pretty high up person. And she comes to the meeting, and obviously she says, the president wants to know what's going on, so she sits in on that. But then we learn that her and Harris had a relationship, and that Claire ruined his marriage. So obviously Harris fooling around with Grace now is not the first time he's done that with an employee. So we learn a little bit of background there, and I'm guessing Grace. Well, I'm not guessing. I know that she doesn't know about Claire and Harris in the past. So that will be very interesting if she does find that out, and then see where that relationship goes. But yeah, he says that you ruined my marriage. So obviously, maybe his wife found out, and then that's what happened there, and they separated. So there you go. And yes, okay. So now I will. So that was just before the meeting, and then after we saw that, and then because she locked both of them in the office. And then, of course, Harris says, I have to attend to a family matter, and then that sort of goes into this point here. So, the whole Harris and his son Dylan. So, in the very first scene, like I said before, right before the intro scene there, we saw an Asian guy who was, taping a video of protesting at one of the uranium plants, and saying, I know that, this is not the real reason they're getting the uranium or whatever. So he's a pretty smart guy, really smart, individual. I mean, I think he's supposed to be a teenager, probably, maybe like 17 or 18. So obviously he's he's not dumb. He knows what's going on, and he's protesting with friends. And then, of course, he tapes the military coming in and throwing smoke bombs and doing stuff. And of course he resists arrests, and I think he said assault and stuff like that. So pretty serious charges, and he gets put in jail. Now at that time I didn't catch on, at least maybe other people did, but I didn't notice that was going to be Harris's son. I didn't get that because we haven't met him yet. So that was a cool little thing there. They used that clip, and then they hooked us back in, and then gave it that that's his son. So it's kind of cool that we got to see that, instead of them just saying, oh, he was in some fight protesting, right? Really cool thing there. I like that. So then Harris goes to the jail and tries to get him out, kind of playing a tough guy role, saying like, you should be happy that I got you out, which I don't think is the right approach. And obviously we find out that it's not, because Dylan decides that he wants to stay if his father's going to be like that. And obviously we learned that Harris hasn't been a good father to Dylan, and Dylan thinks that him and his friends are going to be in the prison for a long time, and all of them are going to stick together. Obviously that's not what happens later in the episode, of course, but that's what he thinks at the time. So he tells his dad basically to screw off, and his dad says, whatever, I'll leave you here. Which again, I don't think was the right approach, but I think that's just the kind of guy that Harris is. And so he leaves them. He leaves Dylan there in the jail, for I think it was 2 days. Then after he goes there, so that's a pretty sad moment there, that he would leave his son there. But yeah, it was a really conflicting scene, of course. And then we get to Jillian Hayes, I think her name is, right? And of course she's Liam's girlfriend. And she gets invited to lunch by Darius Tans, of course. And he offers her a job. That's so that she's under the same roof as Liam. I think that's what he said. I think he has other motives for doing what he's doing with her. I don't think he's going to, have a sexual relationship or any relationship with her. But I think he has something up his sleeve for her, a plan about her. Obviously, we aren't sure yet, but I'm suspecting that in the future. But he says to Liam, at least, or to us, that he wants her under the same roof so that Liam isn't distracted and stuff like that. So it seems like a good reason. It's a pretty good reason there, but of course Liam kind of sees through that. So then she takes lunch with him, shows up at the lobby, and Liam's really surprised, of course. But yeah, so she goes out to lunch. He offers her a job, and yeah, that's basically that. And then Jillian tells Liam that he offered her a job, and of course Liam is pretty dumbfounded. He doesn't quite know why, and he suspects that Darius is up to something, right? He knows that Darius wouldn't just give her a job. She's not qualified at all. But of course, I mean, being in Jillian's shoes, obviously you'd be upset with Liam saying that, someone close to you who's supposed to support you, being like that. So I mean, I don't know. In that situation, I think Liam just kind of has to hide his honesty and not come out like that. But I mean, he was really surprised, so he couldn't really stop himself in that situation. But anyway, so they fight, and Jillian leaves. So that's not a very proud scene for Liam. But then later on, they make up, they have lunch, and I think at that point Liam is expecting, this is later in the episode, so I'm kind of skipping ahead, but I think Liam is expecting at that point that she's going to say, I didn't take the job, and, I care about you and whatever. But after all as what happened, she says, I took the job. And she gives them the scanning card or whatever, her card that she wears around her neck or whatever, right, and a lanyard. And so that's, and you see his face kind of, and this time he sort of pretends to be happy for her and tells her, what she wants to hear, sort of thing. And because he knows it's best for him, if he wants the relationship to continue. But in the future, obviously, he's going to have to deal with this. He's going to probably have to tell Jillian the truth, or Jillian's probably going to find out the hard way. Either way, I think she's kind of being used in this situation by Darius for something. I'm not sure, but eventually I think we're going to learn about it, and it's going to come full circle later on. So then we get Grace having dinner with the Claire woman there. And she convinces her of telling, or suggesting to the president, not telling, suggesting to the president or the vice president about knocking the timeline down to the second window of 63 days, so then Darius can have more time, because he says in 60 days he believes that he can do it. 6 days he thinks there's no way. So obviously they want to knock it down to the second window, and of course Grace shows her the picture of her daughter there, and that gets to Claire, and she decides, yeah, she's right, and we'll go for the second window. So that's what she suggests to the vice president there. So then, what else is there? So yeah, the Amanda storyline there. I don't remember the news, the news agency. I don't remember it off by heart here. That she works for, but Amanda from there, she's a pretty recognizable name, of course. But yeah, so that whole storyline with that, how she sneaks into Tan's Industries, the building there, and gets to Liam, which is kind of weird, I don't know how she would have snuck in, to the back like that. I don't really understand that. Obviously, she's pretty smart, and she probably, said the right things to the right people, and got back there somehow. I don't know. But anyways, she's eventually found by that sort of like henchman guy for Darius, and he drags her out. And but she tells Liam that she wants to interview Darius to see what's going on with the story and everything. So she's obviously really persistent. She's not giving up on this, and she cares about her career. But I think a little too much, in my opinion. I think she should have just laid it to bed. And wrote, a different story or something about Darius Tans, but not, trying to get into this. But I mean, good for her trying to, uncover stuff, and that's good. But she doesn't know what she's getting into, obviously, right? So, yeah. So then, of course, she ends up getting the interview with Darius, and of course, things don't go her way there. As then he forces her to sign that agreement to not use the pictures of Grace stealing the uranium there, and I'm not sure how she got them. To be honest, I think maybe actually in that scene we saw the pictures being taken. I can't remember at the moment. I watched the episode 2 last week, but yeah, I think we may have seen her taking pictures. Either way, though, she did have pictures, and obviously, she's not gonna fight his lawyers and go in debt for the rest of her life over a little lawsuit thing right there. So obviously, she signs the thing, and but then at the very end of it, she asks him about Atlas. So then, of course, Atlas sparks Darius, of course, right? As he says, oh, never heard of it, right? And he says it really quick too, so you can tell he definitely knows, and he's worried about it now, about what's gonna happen. How does she know that name, right? Stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But she knows a lot of stuff, man, like way too much for what's going on here. And as she starts to uncover more of the details, things could go really wrong here. So we'll see what goes on with that. And then, of course, I'll just touch on this now. So then at the very end of the scene, we see her going into the office there to tell her boss about the story about the Mars, how she's going to write that. And then we find out that she actually has taped the conversation with Darius, and she's listening to it on headphones. And then she just walks out the building and goes to her car, and then all of a sudden she gets hit with this black SUV, and we see it from sort of their point of view. We don't see any faces, of course, but we know there's a man, and he talks to someone on the phone and says, job's done. I think she'll know now, or something like that, or she won't do anything about it now. So they just hit her straight up with a car, and she actually goes all the way over and rolls off and lands on the ground. So that's pretty major. She's obviously probably going to be in the hospital, and that's pretty harsh stuff. So obviously they know that she knows too much, and it's a very important secret to guard here. So I guess they run her over because they think that's the way to go. I'm not sure, but yeah, it was a pretty big scene there. Pretty sad though, to be honest, because I don't think she knows exactly what she's all getting into, right? She's just trying to get a big story. But she did sneak into Tan's industry, so obviously she's doing something wrong, right? But anyways, so I'm not sure if that's Darius doing that with the guys in the SUV, or if that's the government, or if it's a third party, just like the truck that was chasing Liam in the first episode. First episode. So I don't know. We are still gonna find that out. But yeah, that's a big thing there too. So of course, then we see the test that everyone comes to see to make sure that they'll push it back to the second window if this test works. And of course, Croft tells Liam, don't overload the system or else it'll break. And of course, the test isn't going the way they like it. So, Darius there tells Liam to keep going, and Liam knows it's going to overload the system. But Darius, tells him, you got to do it. We have all these people here. Nothing's happening. So he does it. And of course, the thing blows up and it fails miserably. So that's a really tough one there for Darius. Well, mainly Liam and Croft, because they're the main two who are working on it. After they just found this frequency with getting the computer in the building to do it, which I don't know how they didn't think of that earlier, but whatever. And yeah, so that's pretty tough there that the test goes wrong. So then Harris finds out that Grace talked to Claire about the second window there. I think this happens before the test, but yeah. So then he finds out that, and he also finds the earring in his briefcase. So obviously here we see that he figured it out. He didn't know exactly what she did yet in his briefcase, but he knows that she's been in it, and he found her earring and put it on her desk and showed her. So that's a pretty big deal there. Huge deal, actually, because now we kind of knew that Harris knew about it in last episode, but now he found the earring, and he knows that she was in her briefcase. And of course, bad stuff for Grace, and obviously she feels bad. She tries to hug him, and he just walks out. And I don't blame him. I'd be pretty mad. And I wouldn't be able to trust her anymore, right? So that's a big thing there. So then from there, Harris then goes to jail to free his son, and sort of makes up with them. And of course, Dylan tells him, all my friends are gone. I'm the only one here. So obviously, Dylan was betrayed by his friends, and he wasn't, thinking straight when he said, all my friends and I are going to stay here. That didn't happen. And so Dylan's pretty disappointed about that. And then Harris sort of comforts him and, says, I'm going to be a better father before, time runs out or whatever. And obviously, Dylan doesn't get it, but we all get it that Harris, he knows the world's going to end, in 100-some days. So obviously he just says that there. So then he goes for his son, makes that up. Such a good scene there. I like that. And yeah, so then basically the whole ending of the episode, the last, I'd say probably like maybe even 10 minutes. It was a big sequence here. But the whole scene in the NASA headquarters. So this was basically, they got the phone call at the very beginning, and the president says, nope, we're going ahead with the first window because that test with Darius Tan's failed. So we're going ahead with the first window. So they decide, okay, yep, we're ready. And I think we get a time skip of a couple days because we weren't quite at the 7-day. At the very beginning of the episode, I think they had 7 days till this, so obviously it skipped about a week to this first window attempt thing, and I think it was at night that this was happening. So they're in the NASA headquarters. So they launch the probe and they get it off course and headed for this asteroid. And yeah, so, and we also see on the screen there at NASA the asteroid. And not that they can't really do it realistically, but that asteroid was pretty small. Honestly, like that asteroid would definitely not be an extinction level event. If that hit Earth, it's kind of unrealistic. Like, I think the asteroid should have taken up the whole screen. You know what I mean? It would have been huge. So I feel like they didn't do that justice. But again, it's all perspective, and they kind of have to show it in certain ways with the producing and all that. I get that. But just was wishing it was a little more realistic. But anyways, so we see the probe going in, we see the camera on it, and so then, of course, we think everything's going to be fine. I guess this is the way it's going to go. And then, of course, Darius Tans comes in. Grace gets a text from him saying, I have one more thing to do, or this isn't the end here. And we can see, then it shows a scene where Darius is watching the camera. So obviously he's tapped into NASA, so he can see the camera of what's happening with the asteroid. So obviously we know he's up to something. And then, of course, everything goes wrong, and the probe, the engines are fired all the way, so it's going to be off course, and then it starts sort of spinning, and NASA just loses control of the probe completely, and the whole mission is basically a fail. And then, of course, then we learn now I don't remember his name, the guy who basically comes up with this plan and proposes it to the guys. But anyways, he says, then he comes up and tells Harris, he says, the only explanation I have is we've been hacked. And of course then, as viewers, we all know it was Darius. What is he doing, right? Now I was a little torn on this because, yeah, Darius did this, and it's good for him, and hopefully, because his plan's going to be better anyways. This is going to kill 1 billion people. Hopefully his plan is going to save everyone, right? So it's better for that, but this is highly illegal stuff. You can't hack into NASA and do this stuff, right? It's really, really bad. So now obviously he can't show his face, with Harris and Grace anymore, and he probably will not. Well, obviously won't be a part of the task force anymore. So now he's gonna have to work in secret here. In this plan to save everyone. So I don't think it was the best decision, but it's the only thing he could do, right? He tried to get them to agree to the second window, but they didn't. So this was what happened. So then everyone's stumbling, trying to find answers about it. And yeah, So the mission fails horribly, and of course Harris, he doesn't see it at all that it's Darius, and he says, like, give me information on Russia and Iran and China or something like that. So it's kind of funny, kind of stereotypical there for Americans and stuff. But yeah, so it was pretty interesting, and of course Grace then she knows that Darius was up to something, so she calls him and gets voicemail on his phone actually, and says, Darius, I need to know what you just did. Because I think she suspects that he hacked into it, but she's not sure. She probably doesn't want that to be the reality, but as we know, it is. So then, of course, the very ending scene here is Darius in the helicopter, having his drink after it unfolds. And then, of course, we see like an overlay of Grace leaving that message on his phone. So pretty interesting there. So it's a good ending to the episode. I actually, like, when I'm watching the episode, I didn't think that's where it was gonna end. I thought more repercussions were coming, but I guess that's what episode 4 is for. So I'm pretty excited for that, just to see where they're gonna go with it, what they're gonna do with Darius here, and I mean, of course, people don't know that he did it. I guess, right? Only Grace knows. So I guess he doesn't have to worry too much. But he has to worry that no one figures it out, right? Because if someone figures it out, he's done for. So I guess I didn't think of that. But, yeah. So it's a pretty big deal here, and it basically tells us more about Darius' character, that, maybe he's not the most honest guy. And in my opinion, ever since we met him in episode 1, and maybe episode 2, I thought this, he's up to something here. There's something in this for him, and I don't think he's a total honest guy. And I think Croft is kind of right. He's more of a celebrity than a scientist sort of thing. There's a comment in there and about that. So that's my opinion there of that. But yeah, so I think it's gonna be a good next episode to see what all unfolds about this. And obviously then now they're gonna go to the second window, which is in I think about now 54 days, 56 days or something like that from now, or from in the episode. So that'll be very interesting to see what happens there. But that basically wraps up episode 3 here for Salvation. I'll give my rating now, I guess, for this one. So I'm going to give this one a 4.5 out of 5. Very good episode, in my opinion. This was probably the best one out of the 3 so far. Episode 1 I enjoyed. Because, it just introduces us, hooks us, in the first episode there. But I really enjoyed this one. I thought, there was comedy in it. There was, and all the acting is pretty good so far. I haven't seen really any rough patches in that either. And I'm Ian Anthony Dale, who's Harris in this. He's been in a lot of other movies, and I think shows as well. He's really great in his role, and Grace is good too. I forget who plays her off the top of my head, but she's good. So yeah, the acting, and I just love the whole mission sequence there where they did it, and the whole NASA headquarters and all that stuff. The whole thing about Harris and his family, we got to see more into him. I like that, the whole Jillian thing. So we got to see all the stories that were going on, the Amanda thing, the news story, everything that kind of, is going on in the show we saw in this episode, and we saw big things happen in each of them. So that's why I really like this one. It really did it for me. I really liked it. So 4.5 out of 5. The only thing that I was missing maybe is, a couple, like there could have been a little bit more realisticness with the asteroid, I thought, and a little bit more realistic with the, finding the frequency thing. But, I mean, I see the same comparisons with Zoo as well on CBS. I find that they more go with the action, and they hit us with, the surprises and the writing, more than the actual production stuff that we see week to week on the show. So, and I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. I think the episodes are good still, and the shows are good. But that's just sort of how I've learned that the shows are going. So my favorite character for this one, of course, is Liam Cole. I mean, there's lots of other characters to pick from, but he's my favorite in this one. He's funny. I mean, he was saying, I've had no sleep and stuff like that, so he's working hard, and he's definitely trying to get to the bottom of Darius. He's working with Professor Croft. He's basically doing everything here, and he's, a college student, college student, I guess, MIT. You know, he's just doing his best, trying to save the world, which is pretty insane for a guy his age to be doing and helping out with. So I thought that's really good. And the guy who plays him is an amazing actor as well. I mean, that character is played very well. Yeah, I just love to see more of that Liam and Jillian relationship. I think that's gonna stuff's gonna have to happen with that. I mean, Liam's gonna have to come out and be honest with her eventually, but I guess we'll see where that goes. Anyways, so this has been my review for Salvation episode 3. Excited for next week's episode. I can't wait what unfolds about Darius and what's all happening there. With him hacking into the NASA machines there. So, anyways, that'll do it for me. I will see you next week for Salvation Season 1, Episode 4.